And welcome to the Research Works podcast, brought to you in association with Curtin University and the Healthy Strides Foundation. Your hosts are Dr. Dana Poole and Dr. Ashley Thornton, and together we will interview world-leading researchers in the area of child health to support your practice in being more evidence-based.
The team at the Research Works podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and waters on which we live and work. We pay our respects to all First Nations peoples, elders past and present, and would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this podcast each week, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We recognise their continued connection to this beautiful budja we call home.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Research Works podcast, and welcome back Marissa. Another episode with us as Ash is on a little bit of leave still, so welcome back Marissa. Got you back again.
Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to be here. Thoroughly enjoy it. Welcome everyone. Look, we have a really special treat for you today. Whilst we'll be basing our conversation on a published article that I'll go into shortly, we will be reviewing and discussing it with someone who has lived experience.
Yes, I think it's always really, really valuable to talk about, consumer involvement. We talk about that in research, but it's also so important to have perspectives to shape our practice. Yeah.
And to that end, we would like to welcome Connor Johnstone to the pod. Welcome, Connor.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It is so nice to have you, Connor. We've known you for a while and are really excited to hear what you have to share today. But for our listeners, we want to centre our conversation today on an article published in 2022 by Dr. Noelle Moreau and Professor Richard Lieber. Both very well-known leaders in the field of skeletal muscle, both from a practical, clinical implementation perspective, as well as the inner workings of muscle in people with cerebral palsy. The article is titled Effects of Voluntary Exercise on Muscle Structure and Function in Cerebral Palsy, which was published in Developmental Medicine and Child Neurology. Before we get into it all though, let's tell you a little bit more about Connor.
Oh, this is a good one. Ready, Connor? So Connor is a personal trainer, support worker and table tennis coach currently studying at Edith Cowan University to become a clinical exercise physiologist. Connor has completed a bachelor's degree in exercise and sports science and a master's degree in strength and conditioning. Connor was a participation officer at the Healthy Strides Foundation in 2022 and helped to create the Participate app. Connor has an athletic background, competing in table tennis for Australia from 16 until he was 23, and now currently competes in Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. Connor's career goal is to help as many people as possible with a disability as he can through exercise as a strength and conditioning coach or as a clinical exercise physiologist. My goodness.
Amazing, Connor.
Really, really cool. So now that we've done the formal getting to know you, we're going to do a whole lot more of getting to know you, Connor, but let's start with the icebreaker. Marissa, what have you prepared for us today?
Okay, today's question, Connor, is what are your favourite songs from your teenage years that you still rock out to when nobody else is listening?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of my ones, I think it was in year 8. It was like Jimmy Ricard by Draft. And I sometimes sing that, when I'm alone. So
awesome.
Jimmy Ricard.
I remember that song, even though I was a bit older. I do remember it. That is awesome.
We're a little bit older than you. So thinking back to your teenage years isn't that difficult, I would say, Connor, for you?
Yeah, it can be. No. I found out I was 26 today, so got reminded that I was 26.
Dana, what about you?
Oh, goodness me. I love this question because I love music, as we all kind of probably already know. And for me, I'm going to go back to Backstreet Boys because I did recently go to their concert. I was very happy. Marissa and I did go and we sang our hearts out, actually. And so I would have to say I Want It That Way. It has to be something that as soon as it comes on, I can't concentrate, everything goes down, and I just have to sing it. You are
my fire. That's for another day.
It keeps going, but we do karaoke that frequently. So there we go. That's me, Marissa.
Well, I too like Backstreet Boys, but up there in line with them is Savage Garden. Was such a fan, right. Truly, Madly, Deeply, all the way to Affirmation and Animal Song. Just... my kids tell me to turn it off because I get too excited when I sing along at home.
See, It's good to have these throwbacks. And, you know, I feel like an older person when you go, man, they don't make songs like they used to. But there's some good stuff that's coming out now. And I do make an effort to make sure I keep up to date with the latest. But there's a lot more. And there's so much more swear words in them now too.
No, I'm living in the past still.
I quite like going back there. It's pretty good. All right, now that we have gotten that great bit of information, I'm sure you're all keen to know about us. Let's get into a little bit about what this article is about. And we really want to center our conversation around this article, but really understand how it translates into real life and lived experience. So here we go. Now, physiotherapists and occupational therapists, as well as exercise physiologists, are always wanting to know how to best capitalize on strength training protocols for people with cerebral palsy. Now, skeletal muscles are required for functional movement and force production. And whilst we know that individuals with cerebral palsy experience loss of muscle strength that is caused by injury to the central nervous system, muscle is very plastic and is also dramatically affected. In many studies, it's assumed that voluntary exercise causes the muscle to respond in the same way that typically developing muscle does, but there is scarce data to demonstrate this. So the purpose of this review is to discuss the various forms of exercise with specific reference to voluntary exercise performed by children with cerebral palsy. We want to talk about some of the recommendations and how this is practically carried out, both from the perspective of clinicians and as a consumer of the protocols.
Amazing. A lot to discuss.
Yes.
So, Connor, this is perfect to have your input, especially with all your background. But we want to start today by letting you share with us some of your reflections on growing up and really particularly about the F words. So we want to go through that with you and get your perspective and input. So growing up, I'm sure that there are a lot of the F words that in fact guided what it is that you did, and starting with function. So I'd love to know your perspective of growing up, what this means in regard how cerebral palsy may be affected, how you moved and what you might have needed help with, and what it is that's important to you.
Yep. So my diagnosis of cerebral palsy is spastic hemiplegia on my left-hand side. So it normally encompasses an increase in muscle tone, decrease in strength, and a limited range of motion. Some things as I needed to have help with, I guess, growing up was a lot of like I guess household type of activities. So cooking, even eating. So like using a knife and fork was a bit tough as well at times. And then also just like I guess in sport as well, just trying to, keep up with the able-bodied kids and all that kind of stuff. So like I wasn't able to run and jump as much or like climb on the monkey bars, I guess. So a lot of physical limitations to a degree, but I guess I always found a way to adapt. And a lot of that, I guess, will come to the next F word as well, with my support network and family. So
I really like that. I like how you just described all of that to sort of, talk about the areas that you just needed some support with. And there were really, really practical things around the household, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned, running and jumping and keeping up with your peers. I feel like that's always something that comes up. And I know in the time that you spent here working with all the kids with cerebral palsy as well, that came up frequently. Can you talk us through some of what sort of adaptations happened to help you with those things? Because I imagine that was really challenging at the time.
Yeah, it was a lot of it was challenging, I think, a lot for me psychologically. So I guess I was lucky to have a good support network around, especially my phys ed teacher. I could not skip rope. So when we do that jump for hard or jump whatever the skipping was back in the day, I can't remember exactly the title of it. Yeah. But I would pair up with someone and we'd grab an extra long skipping rope and we'll do a doubles or a tandem type of skipping.
Great.
And then also the one where other people stand on either side and you jump in the middle. So there's always a way.
Yeah.
I would still be stubborn and try to do the single one, the normal skipping. Yeah. But it's just, there's always ways to adapt. And I think it's okay if you can't do something, but there's always something out there that you can do.
I love that. And I guess that's a part of, maturing and getting older. At what point did you find that was okay? Because I imagine, wanting to do it by yourself is a really strong motivator. And then accepting help or accepting adaptation sometimes can be, a whole thing in itself. Yeah. How did you navigate through that?
I think it's like as a kid, it was a lot of crying. So I just wanted to be normal as a kid. So I used to hide my AFO. I'd put like long pants on during summer. It was terrible because I was really hot all the time, but I wanted to cover my AFO.
Yeah.
I guess I think it's a lot to do. It comes back to the community and the people around you. So my brother, my mum, my dad, the therapist I had as a kid. So like yourself, Marissa. I had a particular, I think when I was 13, I had a really good physio that was external to the place I was originally at, getting my treatment done. Yep. And she opened up my eyes to what is possible and really got me to buy in movement and trying to accept what I have. And then also how I can still do things as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, you've already sort of been on the edges of the next F word, haven't you?
Which is family. Mm-hmm. So you've already mentioned, having a good supportive network around you in terms of your family and friends. And in terms of your family, what did therapy look like within the context of family life?
So it was a lot for my mum and dad, and especially and my brother as well, because mum every morning I would have to do some static stretching before school, and I'd hate it, and that's where most of the crying started. And then you would go to school, and then after school, mum would pick me up, and they would take me to the place to do therapy, and it would be either OT, physio, or speech as well, and it was a lot. And at the time, I just hated it because no one else I knew at school was doing that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, why do I have to do this? Yeah. It's not until in hindsight that you realize how important it is when you grow up and mature. So, so their support, and mum and dad as well would take me to all these different appointments, whether it's a PMH or
Prince Margaret Hospital for those external. That's okay.
So you go down the yellow brick road. I still remember that.
Yeah, that's right.
So whether it was Botox meetings or potential surgery meetings, all that kind of stuff, it was really hard on them. And then also for Aiden as well, because I felt like I was taking up a lot of his time. Wow. Well, after school activities, mum always found a way for him to do what he wanted to do as well, which was amazing. So I'm just really grateful to have a really good family around me, immediate family.
I mean, that's when you sort of delve into that and even how you described it. I mean, I know your parents. I remember meeting your brother when he was really little. I think he's probably a lot taller than me now. But the ability to navigate through that and to work your way through, because I mean, they were still working, trying to go to appointments, time out of school, even for your mum to think of things for your brother Aiden to do. It takes extra time, doesn't it, to do that?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's an amazing sacrifice.
Yeah, and she still sacrifices for me to this day. She helps me, if I have problems navigating something, just in normal life, she'll try and help me as much as she can. Yeah. And same with my dad and same with my brother. So and we all help each other out, which is cool. So
beautiful.
It's a bond that there's, started really young and now it still continues now. So it's pretty cool.
That's really, really cool. And that's just, it just sort of highlights the value of family, whether they're your related family or sometimes your extended family. You don't have to be blood to be family. Yeah. And it kind of extends to one of the other F words, which is friends. And maybe let's go to friends perhaps, because I think family and friends, they kind of go hand in hand, don't they? And, it's a great place when you can start to call friends family. Yeah. 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 So tell us a little bit about, friends and how that fit in for you when you're in school and, appointments and how that worked.
So I was pretty lucky. I had a good group of friends at school. So my first ever friend I met him in kindy and we're still good friends today.
It's so cool.
So that was pretty cool. He ended up moving to a different school after kindergarten. Mm-hmm. But our parents were every Friday, you guys are going to catch up and hang out. And we wanted to as well, which was cool. So we did that. And now, he's one of my best mates for, it would be like 22 years now. So it's been cool.
That's so cool.
But like school friends, like I had quite a few, everyone in my year group especially, like would try and help me out wherever they could. I had like, I guess in primary school, like, you go through those different stages of who you hang out with. So like, and some people were a better influence on me than others, of course. But in high school, I found some pretty cool friends that I still keep in contact to this day as well. But yeah, at the moment, like a lot of my like friends are either that I still like make time for is from either I've met at uni, or I go to the gym with them, or like I do jiu-jitsu with them. So it's like I don't know, I've created like a brotherhood like with all the to the places I go to. So I'm able to always be with friends. I may not be able to hang out, like, go out on the weekends all the time, but like I'm still like hanging out with my friends all the time. And I think it's in a good environment to be really around as well. So.
I mean, I was just thinking I often can't hang out over the weekends because I just want to sleep. So there's the real life factors of all of that, isn't there? Yeah. And I think that's really important. Did you find that with friends, did you, in particularly in school, did you have to sort of tell people a little bit about you, or did you find that it was just better not to talk about it? Like, what was your approach through that?
I think in primary school, it was more the approach of like, I didn't want to tell people.
Sure.
Like that's why I covered my AFO with the long pants in summer and all that kind of stuff. As I got into high school, I think I started to tell more and more people. And also they kind of know. So it's like they can see like, I don't use my left hand as much, or like I stumble sometimes when I walk, and they kind of figure it out that way. But yeah, I was also doing some cool stuff. So like a lot of parasport. So that's when I started getting into table tennis. So like people were really excited to know about that. Yeah. So I'd be more open to sharing my disability, and then also like my sport as well, because sport's always like, I don't know, it's like a bit of a common ground that everyone can kind of relate to in a way. Yeah. And so that's what I found was really like beneficial for me.
Sounds like that also sort of your entry point that coincided with when you were 13. Yeah. And you met a particular clinician in your life who I know who she is. She's fabulous. And open your eyes to a lot of that. It just shows how important those conversations are to, match it up with things that you're interested in, which kind of leads to another F word, doesn't it? With friends, and now you're talking about table tennis. Yeah.
And now fitness. And even when you described those three big elements of your life before, so uni, which again is based around fitness and sport and exercise, and you've got your jiu-jitsu and going to the gym. So obviously being physically active is really important to you. Yeah. So whilst we have the data and research to say this, what does fitness mean to you, and why do you do it?
It's something I love because it's opened up so many doors for me, not just like in a career-wise, but like just a mobility, strength, power, flexibility, whatever, like all the physical attributes of it too. Being able to allow me to become the best version of myself, being able to especially with sport, like navigating through different stresses as well. I've noticed that a lot with jiu-jitsu as well, just doing a really hard sport like that, and being able to basically help me deal with tougher times as well. Not just with my past experiences with CP, but like, with work, uni, relationships, all that kind of stuff as well. So that's why fitness is, or like sport in general, is important to me. And then also just the health benefits, like the cardiovascular stuff as well. It's just, I don't know, I'm rambling a lot here, but it's just so much for me to talk about because
I think it's obviously really important. Yeah,
it's a passion, which is why you want to share, which is great.
Yeah, it's so good. And obviously you've made it into your life as well, in terms of what you're studying. Let's take a step back. I want to circle back to the topic of the table tennis, because I think that was really influential, wasn't it? Tell us a bit about your table tennis journey and how that started.
Okay, so at the time, this was 2009, so I was in year 8 then, and I was doing my first parasport, which was athletics. Yep. And from there, we had an Australian Paralympic Youth Games held in Melbourne. And the organisation that was running it, or like taking the WA team over, was like, athletics is at the end of the week, do you want to do something at the start of the week to basically, keep you occupied for that time? And I was like, yeah, for sure. And they're like, oh, do you want to try table tennis? I was like, yeah, okay. So I went down to the table tennis center and I had like one training session. It wasn't even a training session. It was mainly like, oh, this is how you hold the bat and how you hit a ball. And then I just competed over there. And then in Melbourne for that Paralympic Youth Games. So I did both table tennis and athletics. The cool thing was, I didn't know at the time, but I got smashed. I think it was like 11-1 by a Paralympian. So I was like, that was all right. Like, it's a pretty cool experience to look back on. But
and then since then, table tennis sort of evolved a little bit more for you, didn't you? Got more involved?
Yeah. Yep. So after that, I was like, I'm going to, like, I did really well in athletics at that time at the competition where I got silver in the 400.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to be an athletic, or I'm going to be like doing athletics. I'm going to be a runner.
Yeah.
And that dream kind of like shattered when me and my brother were playing footy out the backyard in Chittering. And I went, it was last goal wins. And I've gone to pick up the ball.
Oh, no.
And I didn't pick up the ball yet. I like to specify that so we can hear that.
Okay.
And he's gone and tackled me and broke my ankle. My right ankle. So yeah.
Wow.
And then I was in a wheelchair for a bit after that because one, I couldn't use crutches. And so out of action for like 6 to 8 weeks. And then after I got the cast off, started moving again, I developed Osgood Schlatters in my knee, my right knee, because it compensated for the ankle. And from there, I couldn't really run. It was really painful to run.
Sure.
So I was like, I can still play table tennis. So I continued with that. And then I went to a couple of national championships and then played in an Arafura Games, which is like a international tournament. It was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, kind of just kept training because I just happened to be all right at it.
Yeah.
And then it started to get a little bit more fun. So,
That's so cool.
Yeah. Just, somehow got into the Australian team and then just kept training. And
somehow got into the Australian team.
Not somehow. I worked hard for what I got.
You did, that's right. Let's not skip over that part of it too, right?
I like to be humble, but I also, I know I worked really hard for
that's
what I
right.
did. So, and then, competed for Australia since I was 16 to when I was 23.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Isn't it?
Note to self, do not take Connor on in table tennis. It is not my strength. I'd love to see you serve. I think I always admire how people can serve so swiftly.
Yeah.
Now, obviously you're really busy. You've got jiu-jitsu, table tennis, coaching, gym, uni. Right now, do you do any formal therapy outside of that?
No. No. So like all my therapy is either a lot of it is the weight training I do at the gym. So I try and make that consistently 2 times a week and then trying to manage my training loads with jiu-jitsu as well. So it's a lot on my plate, but then also like I know the benefits that I need to get in the gym. Otherwise my body literally breaks down. So,
yeah. And what a great realization to get to as well, to know that you can self-manage so many of these things and it happens to be your interest. Even though you're really busy, you still prioritize it because you know it's to be important. Kind of leads to one of the other F words I want to talk about, which is fun. Yeah. And, we've kind of talked a little bit about the therapy that you did do. And I know that some of it was a little bit hard and it was a bit tricky because of, what you had to do that was different to everyone else. But can you talk to us a bit about what fun meant for you in therapy? Like, how should we structure things in sessions to make them fun when you feel like you have to do it, or should you be pushed through to do it? Like I kind of want to sort of find out from you from this perspective now, looking back.
It's like I didn't like it as a kid. Like I wish there was like a Healthy Strides Foundation when I was a kid because I having the experience of being here last year, like and seeing how much fun each of the kids are having, like through their therapy. Sometimes they don't even realize they're doing therapy. Yeah. Like, that's one of the biggest things, either like one, to get the buy-in, but two, to create like a longevity in exercise and just movement and taking care of your body.
Yeah, sure.
But for me as a kid, like I used to love doing like, I think the center that I did a lot of my therapy at, they had like some conjunction with a I think it was like a sports team, like a footy team.
Yep.
It might have been a local waffle team or something.
Yeah.
And they would bring those people in and we'd play footy and all that. And that's what I found really fun because I love sport.
Yeah.
So that is what I found really fun. And even these days is I do things that are fun to me.
Yeah.
So like
that's
I love.
good. That's how you choose what you do.
Yeah, exactly. I love going to the gym I go to because one of my best mates from uni actually owns the gym, and then he helps me create my program as well. So he creates it for me, and then we adapt it and all that kind of stuff. And he teaches me a lot as well. So
that's really cool. So would you say that, okay, from your perspective now, this is a big question. What would you say would be the most influential thing that the therapy that you spent time doing when you were younger, what was the most influential thing of that in your life now? Like, what did it set you up for? Is there anything in particular that you can think of?
I think, that meeting with the external therapist when I was 13 was probably one of the biggest things. And then also, I'm going to name drop this because it involves Dana. So the walk aid study really helped me a lot as well. And just gave me a bit more of a understanding about the science behind it all.
Sure.
And it's also why it helped me choose the career I wanted that I've gone down as well. So that's pretty cool.
Fly subject number one. You're the number one, aren't you?
Yep. Everyone out there, I was Dana's first subject in that. So I think it was like 0001.
0001, that's right. Yeah, you were indeed. And so, you were instrumental in getting a lot of stuff that we were doing in that space up, and that was really influential. But it's lovely to hear from this perspective that it was the understanding the why part that was important for you. And to, I guess once you've got that, it's also buy-in, right? So fun's part of that language of buy-in, but the why part I feel is key for you.
Yeah, and when you're really young, I don't think like giving children the why all the time may not be the best like way to go about it, because they're still trying to just like develop themselves, and they're not really focused. They just want to have fun.
Yep.
So you get the fun to buy in, and then there'll be a time where they like just realize it, and it's like a light bulb moment, just like click, and then they realize, okay, this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like you don't exclude the why. It's more about focus on the fun, and then bring the why in sometimes, but don't overwhelm them with that, if that makes sense.
I know what you mean. Sometimes you just want to explain everything. The reason why we're doing this exercise is because we want to be able to strengthen your quads, and you go into all this detail, but they're like, I just want to get on with it. I get that. Yeah.
It's like, how is this going to help me?
Yeah.
Or how is this going to, make this fun for me? Or,
Well, they talk about that a lot, don't they? Like intrinsic motivation is like the holy grail. Once you can get to that place when it comes to anything, whether it's the intrinsic motivation to not eat so many pieces of chocolate around Easter time, or, it's all about that internal, that intrinsic motivation. So if you can help to cultivate that way of thinking, then at some point it clicks. Like you said, there was a light bulb moment. I love how you describe that. Yeah. So one more F word.
Connor, I love you've shared about your past, and we are so grateful for your insight
thank you.
And your wisdom in what you've learned. And I just love how you've got this, like Dana was saying, that intrinsic drive and motivation for fitness and exercise, because you can see the benefit and how it's become part of your life, but now also for your future. So how do you see the things you do now in your future?
Well, I've got a year and a half left of my clinical exercise physiology study. So once I get that done, I would love to either work, like my goal would be to work part-time as S&C coach for para-athletes, and then the other half working in the clinical population.
Yeah, wow.
Just because I think a lot of those areas actually like cross over.
Yeah.
But but then also a lot of people assume they're very different.
Yeah.
But I think like the principles you apply to working with, say, an athlete can actually apply to the clinical population. So however that basically, or like how that happens is, I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, I want to like use both of the fields that I've been in and try and mesh them together to make.
I think that's so special.
Yeah.
That's actually really, really cool.
Yeah.
I love that you've thought about doing that, and I think people will benefit from that so much, which is actually a really nice segue now into what we want to talk about. earlier on we're talking about, the current review that the incredible Dr. Noelle Moreau and Professor Richard Lieber published, and it was all about strength training in cerebral palsy. So this is like my current go-to when it comes to strength training. Yeah. And I just want to talk about that with you, not only from the perspective of, what you do for your own self, because you know the benefits of strength training, but from your perspective as someone who's studying in this area too. So I think those two things already are coming together, Connor, just as you've just been describing. But let's start with this first one. So we talk about muscle strength and then we talk about muscle power. Yep. They're two different things that we need to treat differently, don't we?
Yes.
So I know this feels, we're helping you prepare for exams. I don't know, maybe that's what we can do to help you here.
Thank you.
Let's let's talk about what muscle strength is and then muscle power and what the differences are.
So muscle strength is basically the ability for one to produce force. Mm-hmm. And then power, on the other hand, is how it's described in the literature just here that we've got. Yeah. It's force times velocity, or the rate of which someone does work, the rate of time divided by weight. So, and so the main difference there already, the fact that you've got velocity in there says a lot, doesn't it? So basically how fast you can produce that force is, So each of I think they all relate to each other, which is, I don't think they should be, they are separate and training them is separate, but it's like a cascade effect, I guess. So one want to get the muscle strong, build the size of the muscle, so you do hypertrophy, and then once you've got that increase in muscle size, you have the more ability or the potential to produce more force through that larger muscle fiber or muscle, the muscle group. Yeah. And then from there, you have the strength to produce enough force rapidly, potentially. Yeah. So that's where I think it all relates to each other. So it's like a stepping stone, I guess.
And I think it's really worthwhile thinking about the differences, because we know, some characteristics of individuals with cerebral palsy is that there's muscle atrophy. Yeah. So we know that the muscle is smaller. So the reason of building muscle has got all the, metabolic importances, force generation, bigger muscle, bigger force, that is important. But hypertrophy is something I'm not sure we talk about enough, but it was something that it's something that's important, because you can see a sizable difference, particularly if you've got, one side that's, smaller muscle versus the other side. Yeah. What are some of the strategies that you've put into place maybe, or that you've thought about for hypertrophy? What should we do?
I think so. The research on hypertrophy in general is more the volume load. So it's the rep sets and then the actual load that you lift. Yeah. So 20 kilos, say. So it's the timesing of each of those different components there. So, and also the type of muscle fiber as well that you're hypertrophizing. Yeah. Hypertrophizing? Anyway.
Getting bigger.
Yeah, getting bigger. So, so you'll see in a lot of slow move, if you're doing, say, an increased rep range to get hypertrophy, say 3 sets of 12 or 3 sets of 10, say. If you're doing that with slower movements, you're going to be more targeting the type 1 muscle fiber group, which in an athletic profile is probably, depending on what athlete, sport or athletic endeavor you're doing, may not be ideal, especially if you want to produce maximal force and power.
Because type 1, again, is more your slow twitch.
Slow twitch.
Yeah, that's right.
So more, you'll see them more dominant in marathon runners and those type of endurance events.
Which the interesting factor of that, just to put into space as well, is that we know that there's a change in cerebral palsy, right? So there's an imbalance between that. But I think the key thing is being task specific. Yeah. And so if you are, like you just said there, if you're training in that slower pace, you are targeting those particular muscle fibers. So it's very task specific.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's where I also find it interesting as well, is especially with someone with CP, if you're trying to work more power-based stuff just to help, and strength-based just to move correctly in conjunction with locomotor training and all that kind of stuff, and prevent falls. So that's why muscular power is important as well. But then say if you're an athlete as well and you're doing long distance running, you're going to have some sort of atrophy in that muscle or develop more hypertrophy in those type 1 fibers. So it's it's hard to manage both. And that's why I think, so there's 3 types of muscle fibers, I guess, is the type 1, the type 2A, and then type 2B. So type 2A is more of the hybrid type
That's right.
muscle fibers. So a lot of them shift more towards that, it seems like. And so also an interesting fact is they call type 2 muscle fibers the couch potato one, because you're not actually like using any oxidative or using less type 1 fibers, I guess, when you're just sitting on the couch. So it's like,
That's a good fun fact there.
Can I ask, how you talk about like muscle strength, and then we talk about the function of when you might need those muscle fibers, and then muscle power. Now, I know you go to the gym regularly, and can you tell me how you balance, the dosage and your parameters around muscle strength and muscle power? How do you move between those, and why would you move between those? Like, for what particular reason?
So it depends on the periodization of what I do. So if I've got a competition coming up and it's, say, 2 months away, I'll go more to a strength power block. So focusing more on strength, but as well incorporating some power components to it. As we're getting closer to a competition phase and we got to just make sure I'm a bit more explosive, we'll shift that to more power strength. So focusing more on power while keeping the strength, because the strength itself can shift the force velocity profile to the right as well.
Sure.
So it's one of the most important biomotor abilities we have, because it basically makes us function every day. So that's kind of what I do. And then you can also do contrast training as well, where you so you can put a strength exercise and then back it up with a power exercise, like in a superset type of thing, but you do have like a bit of a break in between. And that is meant to help with the potentiation effects. So you're able to create more power through that. So
I love how you're taking a lot of your learnings into what it is that you're doing. Obviously what you're doing is probably a little bit more than the average person, because I would not be training at that level, because I don't do that kind of competition. But I suppose if we're going to bring it to, clinicians working in everyday practice, and, they might be supporting someone who's getting ready for a jiu-jitsu competition, maybe not. But we're just talking about everyday function. We know that muscle strengthening, as really highlighted in this review, is so important. We want to build muscle. We want to build muscle capacity, and that's highly related to, their performance and their function. And so we've kind of differentiated between muscle strength and power a little bit, because I think it's important. I know they're related, but it's important to note there is a difference, and velocity comes into play with power. But let's talk about maybe the frequency of practice, maybe. Let's talk about that, because in this review it talks about 2 to 3 times per week on non-consecutive days, which, I'm a huge fan of, because I know that our kids don't have that much capacity sometimes to recover, particularly if you're working in the same muscle group. Realistically, in terms of how you would train, would you alternate days, or would you go back to back? Like how do you do it?
It depends on the exercise or the training session I had before. So ideally, like the non-consecutive days works really well. Just because you have that time to recover, especially with kids with CP or adults with CP. Because it takes a lot more energy to do daily tasks of daily living. So that could be really beneficial. But if someone is more trained, then you can do consecutive days, but then you change the volume and the intensity as well. Depending on what you do on that first day. So normally you do your heavier type of sessions at the start of the week, and then as you go through the week, just for normal fatigue and all that, you start to lower or reduce the load accordingly.
It's great. So I think that already is really quite practical. And Marissa, how practical and important is that when you're looking at scheduling and how frequently people are having intervention sessions?
Well, it's so important, because you need that rest and recovery, because then it maximises what you can get out of then your next session. And like you said, we all know that when you undertake some strength and muscle power training, which is often what we're doing in therapy, in a targeted way. So it just reinforces, I think, the importance of that rest and recovery.
And I think you were talking about the minimum there, aren't we? We're kind of going, okay, that's a consecutive, but I love how you've kind of gone, if you want to take it to the next level and you want to push it and you're capable of doing that, you can do so, but you do have to think about your muscle groups and you've got to think about the volume.
So like we know that the lower limb takes longer to recover, and then it goes the trunk, and then the upper body seems to be recovering the quickest.
Yeah.
So how you could probably, like if you're in a gym setting, or even like just doing like body weight or resistance training stuff in a non-gym setting, is you could do your heavy stuff at the start of the week, or your more demanding. So whether that's your squats or sit-to stands, those like bilateral type movements where you're going to use a lot more strength. And then you could do the second day as an upper body, and then maybe a total body one on a Friday but you're reducing the volume and the loads, and maybe targeting a few different isolated exercises just to basically top up, I guess, as well.
That's really cool. That's a good way to see it.
I love how you describe
put
it.
that into practice for
More
ourselves
achievable
as well.
too.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
so too.
Every day is a huge commitment, and obviously that's not what it's saying. It's saying 2 to 3 times a week. I love how you broke it down.
It's a good way to see how you can plan that out. Okay, so the last two things I want to talk about. So we've spoken about strength and power. Power being more about speed, looking at that sort of higher sort of velocity of movement. We've talked about 2 to 3 times per week. Now let's talk about duration. In this article, it talks about 8 to 20 weeks duration of kind of like planning, which, you know, I'm all for planning because there's only so much time. And, you know, if you were to think about, cast yourself back to the time when your mum might have been taking you to appointments, you know, imagine if we said to her, you could be doing this for 20 weeks. You'd be like, whoa. So I think that's probably why there's a bit of a range from 8 to 20. But talk us through what you think.
It depends on what the goal is. So like if you need to become stronger for a particular reason, which I guess from a, like say if someone's just first doing therapy or exercise and they need to develop that muscular strength, it's okay to take like 12 weeks. But then also say every 6 weeks or every 4 weeks, you can change like a few of the exercises, or even like the tempo or the speed. Tempo and speed are the same thing. But even like the intensity, like you can slowly move it up and down the percentage of 1RM, or like we're not going to use 1RM really in like clinical settings like this. So even if you do a rate of perceived exertion, like moving up and down that, or even a reps in.
So what you're really saying is it's progression. It's making sure there's something progressing. You're not doing the same thing over and over again for that time, which probably wouldn't be very fun.
No.
Okay. Last thing now to talk about is rest. So this is not just we're not talking about the rest in between days. We're now talking about rest in between sets. This article refers to 1 to 2 minutes of rest in between sets, but they do talk about 48 hours between sessions. So that's their current recommendation based on, you know, what they've viewed. So we'll talk us through, first of all, 1 to 2 minutes between sets.
I like to think of, like, I think that's a little bit too short in the 1 to 2 minute range, mainly because of the way ATP needs to get resynthesized and the phosphocreatine, all that kind of stuff. So if the longer you have to recover, especially with strength, because you're trying to produce as much force as you can with the strength. And with power, you want to produce as much force with velocity. So you need that rest for the ATP to recover, and you can actually produce the maximal power that you want, or the maximal strength, depending on which one you're training. So I go 2 minutes at a minimum, maybe 4. But the only problem with that is like in a clinical setting, you've only got like 50 minutes with your client. So you're trying to figure that out, and that's where supersets may be good. So where you maybe do a lower body exercise, and then you pair that with an upper body exercise, just so like the local fatigue isn't too much. So there's always ways around it, but like if you're just wanting to say for like a main lift, like, or a main exercise, like a sit to stand, and you do that first, maybe having adding in like an extra minute, so it goes to 3 minutes of rest will be beneficial, especially with the recovery time with CP as well. So it's multifactorial. I think it's a good guide that they have here. It's just, I think it's just
a reminder to rest. Sometimes I think you can just go, let's get all these reps out, and you forget to rest. Sets out. So I think that's a good point, isn't it? And you're sort of saying, really, that's the minimum. If you can have more, you do, but you've got to be practical within your setting.
So it's a great guide. And I think it just all comes down to the individual and the person you're working with. So
Yeah, so I really encourage everyone to look at that table. It's a great article, but actually have a look at the optimal dosing parameters that associate between strength and power training. One thing I just want to sort of finish up on is, obviously sometimes when we talk about strength training, it really, people in their minds always go straight to GMFCS level 1 and 2, but it's so relevant for children who function within GMFCS level 3, 4 and 5 too. You spoke about it quite a few times about sit to stand already. And sit to stand is such a powerful functional tool that is so important for so many things, when you talk about transfers and ADLs. So you do need to train for strength and power for that. So, you can practice that using equipment, but, you can try these parameters and think about these parameters. It might be their own body weight to start off with, but you could probably progress it or work through more range, think about the volume. I think that's a really practical perspective. Yeah, for sure. And especially like if you're doing more body weight exercises, like changing the tempo they've got here. So like the slow to controlled moderate speed, which works perfectly because you get more time under tension, cross bridges have more time to attach, and then, you're able to produce more force. So there's a lot of ways to do it. And it's not just like anything can be a resistance training exercise or strength training exercise. It's just got to have some sort of resistance, right? So body weight's a resistance, a band. You could use towels. You can like even like there's like even a water bottle, holding up a water bottle to the side could mean something. And it doesn't have to be like generic gym movements as well. Like what you do at Healthy Strides, where it's like the locomotor training, because that produces gives a strength adaptation as well, because they're putting force into the ground, that's coming back up, and you're actually having to use muscular strength for that. So just thinking about resistance, I think that's a good way to formalize it.
And like the crawling, the even sitting for a lot of children as well, just like maintaining that upright posture when they're sitting in that diamond shape or cross-legged. Rolling as well. So like it's a lot of the tests that you'll find in the GMFCS, GMFCS. That's the one. That's like resistance training in its own right as well, because they're using their own body weight or like using their musculature to support their own body weight or part of their body weight. So it's not just about using like gym equipment. It's about anything that you can do in life.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to finish. I
love this.
Summarise that.
Because it's all about using the evidence, what we know about building strength and power. You can bring it together with function, and then we can make adaptations, like we said, across the GMFCS. And it's all about producing that optimal outcome towards function.
And make sure it's fun as well.
Absolutely. Sure my mind is ticking, Connor. You're really inspired. So thanks for all your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look, to everyone, we'll put the link for this particular paper to refer to. Remember, this is the recommendations for optimal dosing. And as you've heard from Connor as well, there's a lot of things that you can work with that within your sessions. It's just to help us to really know what we're targeting and to be really specific about our targeting. So remember to head to our website, researchworks.net, if you want a copy of this paper, our run sheet notes are all there. Remember, there's a CPD form there that you can fill out as well if you want to keep this as part of a record of your PD requirements. But for now, we've got to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for coming in, Connor. It was wonderful to speak with you. Thank you for sharing your story and your expertise. I think the industry is going to be stronger with you in it for sure. Can't wait.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear what comes in the next few years with your study and your training.
Oh, my goodness. Watch out, world. Watch out.
It's exciting.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone. Thank you, Connor, and we'll talk to you all again next time. Bye.
Bye.